Over the past decade, football has undergone a significant transformation, shifting in ways that have stirred mixed emotions among fans. As the game evolves, a growing sense of discontent has emerged, with many mourning the gradual replacement of the beautiful game by a more mechanical, robotic style of play. The steady decline of technical football skills in favor of physically imposing athletes has particularly fueled this sentiment, leaving many nostalgic for the flair and finesse that once defined football. But is this just a common worry that defines every football generation, or does it hold some merit this time? The answer, of course, is subjective, but maybe not as much as you might think. A decade ago, the likes of Lucas Moura at PSG or even Wilfried Zaha at Crystal Palace were what you might call traditional wingers. Skillful wide players with their most important role being to beat their man and send the ball into the box. The so-called traditional winger was usually judged on his ability to dribble past fullbacks and set up that perfect final pass leading to a goal. The transfer of Jack Grealish from Aston Villa to Manchester City perfectly epitomizes the decline of this role. Once an exciting talisman who would take the ball on the left flank and create chances for his teammates through his clever dribbling and visionary passing, at Villa, Grealish was hailed as a world-class talent. However, after the €100 million transfer to the Etihad in 2021, he has played like a shadow of the player he once was. The patient, possession-based style of play has diminished his role on the wing, reducing him to merely holding onto the ball and serving as an outlet to keep the play moving. Now, whenever Grealish gets the ball on the left wing, it's all too predictable. He takes a step or two towards the opposing fullback, only to cut back and pass the ball backward. Pep Guardiola certainly has a hand in this unwelcome change to the sport, but he can't be blamed entirely for the decline of flair. The fact remains that football will always keep evolving, and evolution will cater to winning matches through efficiency. Unfortunately, the skillful winger of the sport has been deemed surplus to requirements, and the age of the efficient and responsible winger is now upon us. This isn't necessarily a bad thing for the sport itself, but as fans, we can't help but miss one of the best parts about football: skills and flair. Genuinely ask yourself if you would rather watch Grealish at City or Zaha at Crystal Palace. Without picking at other comments, let us know down below. For comparison's sake, let's rewind a few decades and look at the quality of wingers back then. The early wingers of the game, even before the emergence of the 4-4-2 formation, only had one job: dribble past defenders and cross the ball to the centre forward, and occasionally take a shot yourself. Mani Garrincha was one of the best wingers of all time, who played his role for Brazil in the 50s and 60s. During the 60s, a new formation would emerge in English football, which would add to the responsibilities of wide forwards. The next few decades saw the rise of wingers and their importance in teams. A pragmatic midfield in those days left the majority of creative responsibility up to the players on the flank. The 70s belonged to Ajax and Bayern Munich and their corresponding popularity of their 4-3-3 and 4-4-2 setups respectively. Johan Cruyff would drop deep from the centre forward position, as both wingers would be allowed more space and access to make runs inside. This was an evolutionary point in the position and made the role more prominent. This was followed by the rise of English football, as Aston Villa, Liverpool and Nottingham Forest wreaked havoc on the grandest European stage in the 80s. The next 2 decades were dominated by Italian football, and another shift in the role was noticed. As AC Milan and Juventus reached greater heights, the fullbacks were given the responsibility to stretch the pitch, while the wingers were instructed to slightly push inside. The result was the emergence of Roberto Carlos and Cafu-like attacking fullbacks who would be responsible for crossing from out wide. The wingers would alternate between playing on the flanks and drifting inside the box to overload the area and convert these crosses. The next era of wingers, starting from the late 90s until the early 2010s, was the most rewarding for viewers. This period saw the perfect blend of clever tactical setups along with reliance on individual brilliance. And so Ronaldinho was born, along with Beckham, Figo, Robben, Ribéry, Bale, and countless other legendary wingers. Suddenly, there were a variety of tactics on display and a variety of roles on the wing to fulfill. This led to various profiles of players being able to fit into the winger role. Sami Nasri, who was conveniently an attacking midfielder, was put on the flank by Wenger in 2010. He was instructed to use his creativity on one flank, while Theo Walcott acted as a traditional winger by making runs from the other side. So then what happened in the 2010s for the best era of wingers to gradually turn upside down? One evident evolution over the past decade has been the transformation of attacking fullbacks from a luxury to being an essential part of the game. This has in turn affected the role of a traditional winger, because one of the fundamental roles is to provide width on the pitch. But now fullbacks are often instructed to venture forward and be the width providers. This led to the popularization of the inverted winger role in today's game. The concept wasn't new, as was seen in the Serie A in the 80s and especially the 90s, displayed attacking fullbacks with one or both wingers tucked inside. The trend was then picked up across Europe and a more traditional kind of inverted winger emerged, but this was usually common with bigger and more attacking teams. One of the most remarkable inverted winger duos came from Bayern Munich when Robben and Ribéry redefined the potential of the role. The advantage with inverted wingers isn't confined to just cutting inside and shooting. Even though Robben rinsed and repeated that throughout his career, no one could stop him, even though everyone watching knew what was coming next. The role also opens up more space and passing angles for the player to pick a better option than simply putting it across every time. Cutting inside to your favoured foot while the fullback is forced onto his weaker side also provides an extra advantage. Inverted wingers emerged in the 2010s frequently, with Bale, Messi, Ronaldo, Hazard, Sanchez, Neymar, Mane, Salah, and so many other iconic players. As tactics became more fluid over the last decade, the responsibilities across positions became interchangeable. This allowed someone like Eden Hazard, say, to play a free role and be the creative outlet while technically being a winger. But these are still exciting and skillful names. So when did their era come to an end? It's hard to name any players today who could be considered in the same league in terms of entertainment. Even though the idea of a traditional winger has become more obsolete in the 2010s, the tactics still catered to relying on skills and individual brilliance. The death of the number 10 role also has a part to play in the obsolescence of the traditional winger. But the most influential factor in the decline of skillful wingers has been Pep Guardiola. Maybe not directly, but the shift towards a possession-based pass and play style has become the norm across the world. Guardiola has revolutionized modern tactics to the point where every action on the pitch needs to be the most efficient one in the situation. The freedom and instinct of skillful players have been replaced with predefined instructions to repeat the most efficient patterns until they score. This means that Jack Grealish isn't passing it backwards from the flank because he doesn't possess the skill to beat the fullback in a 1v1. No, he's doing that because it has been identified as the most efficient way to proceed. This epidemic of completely shutting down the player's instinct and making them stick to a set pattern directly implies that they don't have as much freedom to showcase their flair. As much as we love to watch a silky skill payoff on the pitch, it's a high risk and medium reward strategy in the modern era. Even if you're Neymar, who let's say beats his man with a skill 6 out of 10 times, you don't want to lose possession those 4 times today. The mindset now is, why try a fancy move that could turn possession over when you could pass it around and wait for a more efficient way into the box? So it's safe to say that the skillful era of wingers is definitely over. It doesn't mean that there are no skillful wingers who are excellent in the role today, but the levels have massively dropped off and the risk-reward ratio of skills has become unfavorable against modern tactics. Players like Vinicius Jr. and Jeremy Doku are trying to keep the torch aflame today, but the standards for skills are at an all-time low. A rare backheel or a simple flick nowadays is plastered across social media for days on end. What used to be an everyday practice across football is now a source of scarce and long drawn out excitement. An even more upsetting thought is how it is bound to become worse as modern tactics will continue to shun inefficient actions on the pitch. The game is quickly shifting towards a more tactically reliant approach with 11 blank slates given hordes of instructions. The 11 players in a team are turning into 11 cogs in a machine. Again, the game will always keep evolving, and from an objective point of view, it has improved. But the fans are suffering because skills in football are one of the most enjoyable aspects for viewers. While the immediate future doesn't seem too optimistic in terms of watching wingers artfully deceiving their man, the constant evolution of football provides a silver lining. Maybe the future holds a comeback of the skillful winger role, or even skills in general. Until then, we all need to cherish the few players still capable of producing those magical moments and hopeful for a skillful future. If you know any player who you think has gone under the radar for his skills in today's game, comment his name below and enlighten the rest of the people watching.